just a moment. For me, it's been several days. I did get around to painting this reel, and I must say it didn't go quite the way I anticipated. It was late at night. I was in the middle of home renovations, and I decided, hey, let's go ahead and knock this paint out tonight. Well, when I did it, I shot the primer on. 5 minutes later, the primer was still damp, to say the least, and I shot the gold on. And 5 minutes after that, I came back and I shot the clear coat on. Well, when I got done doing that, everything looked great. I went to bed. 2 o'clock in the morning, my dog got me up. I went out to the garage and took a look at it, and the whole thing had turned gray like primer. The primer had bled right through all the gold because everything had been layered on too quickly. So I grabbed my can of gold and shot another layer on it. And what happened when I did that, it was still a little on the soft side. If you look closely here, right along this part, let's see if we can zoom in on that a little bit. The paint started to sag just a little bit right there. Did it in a, let's see, I got a little bit of a run right here. And I think I got another one. Nothing on the rotor. The rotor was good. I think I got another one over here. But anyway, it wasn't the greatest painted job in the world. And I talked to Chris Jenkins about it. And Chris is my local collector, or not local. He's my subscriber, and we talk often. And this reel is going to be a used reel. I'm going to be taking it to the coast and using it quite a bit. So, or I'm hoping to use it 3 or 4 or 5 times a year down at the coast. And that's probably going to be a little difficult on it. So I decided it doesn't really matter if the paint's rough, because paint's going to end up rough on it. So that being said, we're going to leave the paint alone. If it ever gets really bad and starts to chip off again, I'll strip it down and redo it one more time. So we're going to put it together like this. Hopefully you guys will forgive me for that. But anyway, let's continue on. First thing I want to do is I want to glue this balance weight back into the rotor. Otherwise, this thing will be wobbling all over the place. So we're going to be gluing that right in there. The way I'm going to do that, we're going to use a little bit of rubber cement. Well, and this rubber cement has definitely seen better days. It's just about shot. But we'll put a little bit in here. Look at that stuff. It's all right, we'll take that little bit there and we'll spread it around. In just a short period of time, that'll be pretty solid in there. And in the meantime, when I put the side plate on here, it's going to hold all that in place. Okay, so we'll go ahead and set that into place. Put the screw in. There we go. Okay, it's got that side taken care of. Now we'll move to the other side, where we have to put in the spring. And one side's going to go into that hole. The other side goes into the hole that's right here. Okay, that hole right there. Oh, that hole right there. It's going to go into that hole, and I'm going to put a little bit of grease in there to help hold it in place. And I'm going to stick in the spring. There we go. Now, okay, now we're in there. Okay, what we're going to do, now they've got that spring set, is we're going to put grease in here to help that spring slide on that painted surface in there. Okay, then we're ready to set this piece back in. That's our cover plate. Slides on like so. And I think there's a possibility that the other screw that I put on the other side actually belongs on this side. We're going to find out in just a minute. All right, we'll slide that down. And I don't believe this is the screw for this side. It's not. Okay, so we're going to take this screw back out of this side and put that one in there. Yeah, the longer one is one that goes in on this side. I thought that was the case when I put it in, and it just seemed like I didn't have it about 3 turns. Okay. Okay, and we got a little bit more to go in with this screw. There we go. Okay, and now we're going to put a little bit of oil right here, and a little bit here on the head, and a little bit on the roller. Okay. Exercise that back and forth a little bit, and that's good. Okay, that's got the rotor done. Okay, the next part to be installed is going to be the anti-reverse. And I'm going to take this spring off for the moment, but notice that it goes in from the bottom, from the inside edge. Goes on there. I'm going to clean this up real quick. Okay, I'm going to remove the screw from over here. Make sure my hands are free of solvents and everything else. We're going to slide this in over here. It's going to go into this hole. Now before we do that, let's put just a little bit of grease inside the hole on this side and inside the hole on this side. And that will help this shaft turn inside there. Okay, so the shaft's going to go down through the hole like so. And then the other end of it's got to go through this other hole on this side. See it? Right there. That's going to go in there. Now, before we push it down all the way, we're going to come back over here and we're going to get this spring. And the spring has to hook in from the bottom side like this. Okay. And with that done, as we drop this down into the hole, this little foot over here, the little tag end, has got to drop into that hole right there. Okay. I'm hoping you can see it in the camera. Trying really hard to make sure that everything is in view as we do this. Oh, okay. And we need that little foot right there to drop in like that. When it does that, then we're going to bring this around and we're going to turn it so it goes the opposite direction. And that'll lock it into this place. Now we have to put a finger over it to keep it from falling out while we come to this side and put the foot on, or the handle. Like that. And then we'll put the screw in. We're going to put a drop of oil here on the shaft and a drop of oil over here on the shaft. And then we're going to exercise that just a little bit. Okay, let's get that done. Now, the next part to go together is going to be the pinion and the bearing. And now I took this bearing and cleaned it as well as I could. And you see it spins nicely. Okay, and I'm going to oil that. And now that it's oiled, it's not going to spin nearly as freely as it did. Okay. And I'm going to take, and I'm going to get a little bit of acetone, and I'm going to wipe out the paint from inside here so that this bearing, when it goes to go in, doesn't stick in the paint. See how it's tight? Well, if I clean that paint out of there, it should slide right in, I believe. All right, now the bearing's a nice fit. So we're also going to add a little oil around the outside of this bearing so that in the future you won't have to use a slide hammer to get it out. Okay, slide that in. There we go. I'll wipe the excess oil off, and we're going to install these parts. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is install this bearing retainer. Let's back out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing. And it's held in by these 3 screws. All right, the next thing that's going to go on, it's going to be the anti-reverse cog. It goes on like this with the gear set down. That gear's not used on this particular model, but it's there. It's part, you know, it's where they use it for multiple different designs. Okay, it's got that in. Next is going to go your anti-reverse claw. Your anti-reverse claw is going to fit in over here like so, and it has to slide over this cog like that. Okay, then it will sit down into place over here. And it goes in with this screw. Okay, now this rotates, kicks that over like so, and now if we put it in anti-reverse override like so, now it can't catch it. Flip it back, and there we go. Okay. Now notice that we got this post over here that's not being used at all. There is and it's like, it goes along with that clicker. Some models had a clicker that went on this post over here, and it rode down here on there. And as your anti-reverse would operate, instead of operating silently, it would make a click, 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 click sound. This one doesn't do that. Okay. And I'll go ahead and turn anti-reverse into override. All right, next to go in, it's going to be the main gear. Well, actually the oscillation gear. Yeah, let's get this cleaned up. Okay, before we get too far along, let's go back to this part right here. I'll put my finger over the end of it here to keep it from sliding the spring out of the hole. And let's take this knob off because I forgot to put a part on. And that's why you have to constantly monitor your parts to make sure that you haven't forgotten anything. And in this case, it was the washer that goes on this end right here. And just slipped my mind. Okay. Get the knob back on. Put the screw back in. No harm, no foul. All right. Now we're ready to put in our crosswind block. Now this crosswind block is a little different from any that I've encountered before because this one actually has a thrust washer at the bottom. And we're going to put a little bit of grease in the bottom of the case. Then we're going to set the thrust washer in and go ahead and grease it as well. I've never seen one like that before. Usually the gear just rides in the case. And in this case, it doesn't. Okay, so let's go ahead, grease up the teeth on the gear. Put a little grease on the bottom of the gear. And we're going to set it in place down here and rotate it around to where the post is to the rear of the fishing reel. Okay. Now, at this point, we're going to need this crosswind block over here. So we're going to unscrew it off of here. And we'll put some grease onto there. Now, I had this reel, the sub-components of this reel broken down into their own little bags just to help keep remembering where everything goes, because it's been well over a week since I started on this. And I don't absolutely know where everything goes. So that being the case, I wanted something that would help guide me. All right, the oscillation block is in, or crosswind block, depending on what you want to call it. And let me get this gear cleaned up. All right, now you saw me clean up the ends of this gear so that the bearings would fit on. The bearings have since been cleaned and sprayed, and they actually perform very well now. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this bearing in at the bottom down here. And I might have to take that crosswind gear out to get it to go in. All right. This bearing's going to have the same problem as the other bearing is going to have with being needing the paint out of the way. So let's pop it out of there and let's take the acetone and clean the paint out of the area down here where the bearing's going to fit. That should be enough to get the bearing to go in. I'll put it in with the shielded side down. There you go. Bada bing, bada boom. And we'll set the crosswind gear back into place and make sure that it has got its washer or spacer or shim in the bottom, and get the post rotated to the rear. Slide the crosswind block back in. There we go. Would have been better to have put that bearing in to begin with. Okay, now let's go ahead and grease up the main gear. Okay, we'll go ahead and install the main gear in through the bearing. Oh, before we do that, let's go ahead and grease the pinion gear. So now let's install the main gear, like so. All right, at this point, we're ready for the rotor to go back on. And we've got to line the flats up on the pinion with the flats in the rotor. There we go, like so. And now we're going to slide on this washer. And we're going to tighten down the nut. Okay. And do not rotate it around like I just did until you've got the axle shaft in. Otherwise, you're going to end up with problems like I just did. Oh, I do things like that just so you guys can know not to do it, right? No, I screw up. And my wife has finally figured out just, I think really in the last few months, that every time I start laughing when I'm by myself, it's because I've messed something up. And her response to that is, you know, you laugh by yourself a lot. I said, yeah, I know, baby. I know, because I make a lot of mistakes. And every time I do, I just laugh about it and go on. Okay, now we're going to oil the axle shaft. And we're going to slide it in to the end here and start rotating it around so that that oil gets down inside the tube. And then we're going to bring it to where the flat is sticking up, and we're going to get that to go into the crosswind gear, or crosswind block, like so. There we go. And I'll zoom in for those of you who might need that extra visual. I just got to remember, see, the flat comes out of the top, and it slides right in. And you may have to wiggle it around a little bit to get it to go, but it'll go. All right. Now we're going to put this screw back in. All right, I have emptied out all my little bags. And what I notice that I don't have here is any shim washers for this main gear. Now, the odds are pretty good it's going to need at least one shim washer in here, but it doesn't have one. I don't remember if I took one out or not. I certainly don't see one in my parts. Let's check the bag, see if there's one hiding in the bag somewhere. And I do not see a shim washer anywhere. Okay. What I'm going to do, and this may be too much of a shim, we'll see, is a few months back, I purchased some shim washers, and I purchased a batch of them. And this particular one here is, I think these are the 0.5 millimeter shim washers. And yeah, these are 0.5. These are much thicker, I believe, than the other one. Let me get the other one just to make certain. All right, we're going to put that on, and hopefully that's going to be the right thickness for a shim in here. If you've got a shim in there, use the ones that you got. What we're going to do, we're going to check it when we get to the end and see how much play there is in the crankshaft once we put it all back together. And we're going to pause just a minute again while I clean some more paint out, because I'm almost certain that this bearing is not going to go in with the paint that's in there. Nope. So let me clean that paint out, and I'll be right back to you. All right, I'm back. I believe that bearing will now fit in there okay, and it did. All right, let's go ahead and oil the bearing. And let's go ahead and set it in place and see if we're sitting proud. We do not appear to be. Okay, so let's go ahead and put our 3 screws in and do a quick double check to see if our crank is going to be okay where it's at. Okay, let's see if that's too tight. Doesn't appear to be. Let's stick a crank handle on, tighten it down, and see what happens. Okay, that's tight. See if there's any in play. Okay, there's just the very slightest in play. If you look, I could even put another 5/1000 in. Let's see how this sounds. I'm going to pull out on the handle and crank it, and I'm going to push in on the handle. Okay, it's much smoother pulling out on the handle. So what it's going to need is it's going to need a shim washer on this side to push that out that way. So let's go ahead and pop this back apart. I found this on the GS-90 that I did. I found is the first time I've ever needed to shim on the opposite side of the gear in order to eliminate gear grind. And looks like this one has the same issue. Seems that the gear is meshing too deeply. And it's causing a grind. I'll show you what I'm going to do. Hopefully this 5/1000, I've got some 0.5 millimeter or 0.01 millimeter shims around here somewhere. I've got to find them if this 0.5 doesn't work. Okay, pop that out. And am I going to be able to get that out? No, I've got to remove that axle shaft screw. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to add a shim washer to this side of the gear. Okay, let me make sure that the crosswind block is in the way it needs to be, and it's not again. It has shifted again. So let's set it back in. Set that back in. We've got our shim on this side now. And we are going to have to do it a little bit different. The shim washer is interfering with the gear. So we're going to have to put the shim washer in first, under the gear, and then slide the gear in. Okay, there we go. All right. That's much better. That got rid of the grind. Okay, I've got a little excess oil built up here. We're going to sop that up with a cotton swab so that we're not slinging oil all over the place. There we go. Okay, now there's ever so slightly a bit of play in the crankshaft, but the gear grind is gone. Okay, we got to that point. Let's go ahead and clean our drag washers. This appears to be a paper washer. It could even be one somebody made, but we're going to put a little grease on it just to try to protect it a little bit. The other ones in here are Teflon washers, and I'm not sure this one even performs much function except it's on the bottom. Next is going to go in the keyed washer, like so. Next goes in a Teflon washer. Then comes an eared washer. It's got the two little ears on it, and it's got to go in so that those ears fit into those notches, like so. Then the last Teflon washer, and then goes the last keyed washer, and that's going to be followed up by the retaining clip. And there you have it. Okay, we're going to wipe out the bottom side of this. Okay, and we're going to put a drop of oil on it here. I'm still thinking that we might end up needing a new spring in here. But for now, we'll keep with what's in there. Let's slide this on, drop it down. Let's see if we can hear that. You can hear it, but just barely. I'll tell you what, I'm going to see if I can find a new spring. All right, I've had these little springs laying around for a while, and I've never had an opportunity to use one. I'm going to try really hard to put one into use in this reel. So let's go ahead and take the screw out. Like so. Lift this out. And there it is. There's the spring. And it looks smaller and less substantial than the one we were using. All right. We're going to take this one off of here. And we're going to do our best. Try to put this other one on. Okay, I got a new heavier spring on there. Let's see if that does anything for the sound coming out of this. Much louder. Still, that's the wrong direction. It should be louder this way. Let's see if I can do something about that. Okay. Let's see if I can bend this ever so slightly this way. All right. Now let's give it a try. There we go. It's good both directions now. Okay. And if you're curious what I did, you can look. I bent that pointer so that it's facing exactly towards the center of the pin. Okay, so that as it's clicking along, it'll bounce back and forth. Okay. All right. Let's put the drag knob on. Make sure that we have a drag. Nice and tight. All right. And the last thing, let's put our knob on the end out here. That's fitting really snug now since there's new paint in there. And let's back out and let's perform an ops check. We're gonna flip our bail. Perfect. Anti-reverse is working. Okay, flip it the other way. All right, the drag's working, anti-reverse is working, the bail slams, and there you have it, folks. The Daiwa GS-30 saltwater reel, and I plan to take this down to the coast and fish with it. I'm not real sure when I'm going to get that opportunity, but it's going to be here in the next couple months. And yeah, this one is it's going to take its place in the GS. I now have a GS6, a GS-30, and a GS-90, and the GS6 is basically the same as the GS-60. It's just a earlier version than the GS-60. But no, this thing's working like a champ. We're going to put a little oil in the end here and spin that around a little bit. There we go. And yeah, we got a nice little reel here. It's not exactly a little reel. It's a pretty nice size reel. But we're going to be taking it to the beach, trying it out. I hope you liked this video. If you did, please hit the like button. If you didn't, hit the dislike button. Tell me what you didn't like. If you didn't like the paint job, well, I understand that. I'm not crazy about it myself. But it looks a whole lot better than it did when it started. So, if you care to comment, please do so. For now, that's Rick Stivers with Young Martin's Reels, signing out.